We've got barbecue back here. You're all invited. Welcome to the SlooPcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing all right, Jared. Doing all right. How are you doing today, good sir?
Well, Discord's still broken, so that's why we just have the thumbnail up there instead of our Discord chat, because my Discord's broken. I don't know why, but we move forward. Show must go on and all of that.
We're officially if I can talk. We are officially in November, Jared. Officially in November in the college football season here.
Yeah.
And I guess it was last weekend too, but
I thought about saying something, but then I was like, you know what? Just let him have it.
It's the first full week of November. We saw a lot of chaos last weekend.
It's been a long month, Kyle. It's been a long month.
As well as maybe this weekend too. I think there's quite a few good games this weekend here. May see some upsets here, as is tradition with November. November is always full of upsets and
chaos.
Really finding out who really is who. This is go time in college football here.
Yeah, we got our first playoff rankings this week. I'm not going to waste much time on it because whatever, doesn't matter yet. But, it's every game feels a little more impactful. Feel like we know who's going to go to the playoffs, at least in some of the spots. So this is where chaos shines. He started off November strong after a subpar October. He crushed it so far in November. So let's see if he can keep it up. And let's take a look at this week's SlooPicks.
Sure thing. All right. We are going to start with I think noon. Well,
yeah.
There's some 3:30 ones here, but we're gonna start with the noon games here. Miami heading on over to Atlanta. Take on Georgia Tech here. Noon game, and Miami is an 11.5 point favorite over the 5-4 Georgia Tech football team. What do you got in this one, Jared?
Me? Am I going first? All right.
Yes, says I.
Okay. Both the teams are basically like 500 against the spread this year, give or take. So not a lot of help there. That being said, Georgia Tech only covers when they win. And I don't think they're going to win this football game. Miami to win and cover.
I think similar to kind of like when we were talking about the Ohio State Purdue game. Miami will turn it on when they want to, but will they continue doing it throughout the entire game? We'll see here, but I think 11.5 is definitely reasonable here. So yeah, I'll take the Hurricanes to cover in this game.
Right. Next game.
Yeah, next game here. We're going to stick in the noon one. We're going to still odd for me to say this, being Texas's first year in the SEC. An SEC matchup of Florida and Texas here in Austin, noon game here. And the Longhorns, Jared, are a 21.5 point favorite in this game. Seems like a lot.
Does feel like a lot.
My pick in this one here, I think recently Florida has been playing better than what their record is here. They've lost 2 of their last 3 games here, but honestly, like the Georgia game was closer. Georgia pulled it away later in the game. Went into overtime against Tennessee and took care of business over Kentucky in between those 2 games there. 21.5 seems like a lot here, especially since these past few games, Texas hasn't really looked Texas-ish like. 3-point win over Vanderbilt and a 15-point loss at home to Georgia here. Maybe Texas will show up and absolutely blow Florida out of the way, but I'm just going off of what I've seen recently here. So I'm going to pick, I'll pick the Gators to cover.
All right. So against the spread, both of these teams are 5-3. So both teams performing pretty well against the spread this year. That being said, Florida is on a 5-game against the spread winning streak. Meanwhile, all but one of Texas's covers happened in the month of September. I do think Texas wins this football game. However, 21 points feels like way too many points. I think I expect Texas to win by about 14. I think is approximately somewhere between like 11 and 17. 12 to 17, I think is where Texas wins this game, which is not a cover. Not a cover. So Texas to win, Florida to cover.
All right. Sticking into the SEC here, moving on to the 3:30 slots here. Georgia heading on to the road to Oxford to take on Ole Miss. 2.5-point favorite for the Bulldogs in this matchup. What do you got in this one, Jared?
So Georgia has struggled against the spread this year. Mm-hmm. They've only covered twice. Ole Miss, on the other hand, is written my note 6-3. Feels like a lot. Should it be more like 5-3? I wrote, have they already played 9 games? Or did I mistype that? Okay. Nope, I didn't mistype that. So my problem, the problem I'm dealing with, so it's like, hey, Georgia's only covered twice. Mississippi has covered 6 times. Now, typically I'm like, oh, well, that's an easy one, right? Take Mississippi. Problem is that Georgia's only favored by 2.5. So in order for, like, there's a pretty narrow window for Ole Miss to cover, but not win. So at a certain point, I have to ask myself, do I think Ole Miss can actually win this football game? And they can. Don't get me wrong. They can win this football game. But it leaves a very narrow window to cover but lose. And here's where Vegas, I think, this is where Vegas gets their number. This is where Vegas is very devious. Ole Miss 6-3 against the spread. They've only lost outright, not against the spread, but actual football games. They've only lost twice. In both of those games, Kyle, do you know how much they lost by? 3 points.
I was going to say it was like 5 points or something like that.
3 points, both of them. Both of their losses were by 3 points. And the spread is 2.5. Vegas, you tricky bastards. So it's hard for Ole Miss to cover. Like I said, it's hard for Ole Miss to cover without picking them to pull the upset. So do I want to predict Ole Miss to actually win this football game? No, I'm going to go with Georgia. Even though, like, most of my logic that I typically use as far as one team being terrible against the spread and the other team being really good against the spread, that's typically a really good indicator. That's a strong indicator for me to say, give me the team that's been really good against the spread this year as opposed to the team that's been really bad against the spread this year. But that 2.5, I just don't trust it. That's just a little, if it was honest to God, if it was 3.5, I'd pick Ole Miss. Honest to God.
Yeah.
So, and here's the other thing. Those 2 covers that Georgia has were against ranked teams. Georgia this year has a very bad habit of playing down to bad teams, but a very good habit of showing up for big games. I don't think they're going to take Ole Miss lightly. Ole Miss is they're ranked in the teens, right? So playoff bubble team. I think Georgia shows up ready for this game. I think they win the football game. So give me Georgia.
To one of, I forget what rule number it is, and I don't think I can pull it up quickly here. One of our rules here is when in doubt, pick the quarterback.
So when in doubt, pick the quarterback to me is more of a who wins the. That's not that. I don't think that's an against the spread thing for me. I think that's a who wins the game thing for me. But that's just me personally. Interpret the rules for yourself however you wish.
Let's look at the two quarterbacks here. One is red hot the past couple of games, and the other is not.
That
Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback, the past two games, 77% completion, including an 80+% just last week, and 7 touchdowns in the past two games. Carson Beck, on the other hand, in the past two games here, 59%, 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. One red hot, one not so much either here too. So, man, I should have looked at the passing numbers too. Dart having over 800 passing yards the past 2 games. And then Carson has almost 500, which is almost just as much as what Jackson had just the 1 week against Arkansas, which he just flat out balled in that game here. So, but with that, like you kind of tend to maybe go with Ole Miss. Dart is the hot quarterback right now, really getting his receivers open there. Placing the ball where it needs to go here. But I mean, Georgia is Georgia. They have so much talent on that team here. And like what Jared said, they do show up. They do in big games here. 2.5 is pretty much a pick 'em here. So I know this is a make or break game for Ole Miss. This is pretty much one of their big last chances.
Kyle, for as many one-loss teams as there are in the SEC right now, it could be make and break for Georgia. As far as, getting a bye week at the very least, as far as winning the conference goes.
Yeah, but they lose one more game here. This, I think you can almost like kiss them goodbye from the playoffs here.
Ole Miss?
For Ole Miss, yeah.
Ole Miss is playing for a spot in the playoffs. Georgia's playing for the SEC championship game in a bye week.
Yep. So I think Georgia will win this. So 2.5 is pretty much a pick 'em. So I'm going to pick the Bulldogs in this one here. But really, I'm really curious to see how Georgia's defense is going to stand out against Ole Miss here.
For the amount of analysis that we just gave that game, I'm kind of wishing I had thrown them in the thumbnail instead of Bama and LSU. We went in on this one. All right, Kyle, what's next?
Next, I think we'll go ahead and take our first ad break here, and we'll finish the last three games here. So, head on over to thesloopcast.com where you can find all of our great links, such as our YouTube page. So if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app, you can check out Jared and I's lovely faces over at youtube.thesloopcast.com. You can also check out some of our merch store over at thesloopcast.com, merch.thesloopcast.com if you want some Sloopcast gear to wear, or if you're not into this podcast one and just want some cool Ohio-related designs, head on over to 7071.thesloopcast.com. That and many more links over at thesloopcast.com is where you can find that and much, much more. We'll go ahead and take our first ad break and be right back.
Oops, wrong screen. All
right, next game, Jared.
Yeah.
We're heading up to the Midwest, to Bloomington, Indiana, where we have the 9-0 undefeated. No, not Michigan. Indiana Hoosiers.
Man, you're getting a lot of mileage out of the Hoosiers thing this year, aren't you?
Yeah. Taking on the 5-4 Michigan Wolverines.
Kyle,
kickoff.
Our bold prediction for Michigan going 500 this year.
Right
on track.
Right on, yes. 14.5 point favorite, not to Michigan, to the Hoosiers of Indiana.
Yes. Kyle, I got your I got your coin bouncing back and forth between these two. Everyone is itching with anticipation. 3:30 on CBS, by the way.
It is on CBS here. Oh man, like 14.5. The question in this game is going to be, can Michigan score enough points to keep up with Indiana? But then on the flip, side of, yeah. But then on the flip side of that too, Indiana has not played anybody remotely close to a defense that Michigan has either.
Right.
So will Indiana be able to make the plays, keep scoring the points that they have recently here? 47, 31, which was the least amount that they've scored in FBS play here against Washington. 56, 41, 42 going on there. Can they score enough to pull away from Michigan? If they score more than 20 points, they're going to win this game. I think that's pretty much with most teams when they play Michigan. If they score more than 20, you're going to have a good shot of winning that game.
I think we both agree that Indiana is going to win this game.
But I think this is going to be close. Much? I think this is going to be close. So I'm going to pick Michigan to cover.
Ooh.
But Indiana is going to win this game. But they're going to be really tested here. Michigan's really going to come after them. Going to really play spoil here. Their goal in November is to play spoils to every team that they play in November here. They'll make it close, but I got Indiana win, but Michigan to cover.
Kyle, we're going to have our first disagreement of the show.
All right.
So, Indiana, I dare you to find another Power 4 team that is 8-1 against the spread this year.
Ooh.
Indiana is 8-1 against the spread. The one game they didn't cover, they had like an impossibly high number against, I don't even remember who it was. I believe it was an FCS school in week 1. So they didn't cover in week 1, and they have covered all 8 games since then.
Wow.
Michigan, on the other hand, has only covered twice this year. As far as gambling goes, Indiana's a fucking cheat code. Hoosiers to win and cover.
Indiana is number 1 in the country.
Uh-huh.
Against points per play.
Oh.
Points per play.
Yeah. Now, I mean, to your point, they've not played a great defense yet this year. They simply haven't. They've yet to play. They obviously haven't played Michigan yet. They're about to. They haven't played Penn State yet. They haven't played. Do they play Penn State at all?
Let me verify.
I think they play Penn State, right?
No, I want to say they don't.
Okay.
No, because they have Michigan this weekend, then a bye week, then Ohio State, then Purdue.
They get the bye week right before Ohio State. Great. So yeah, I mean they avoid Penn State entirely. They avoid Iowa entirely. What I would call like the the 5 great defenses. I think Oregon deserves to be in that conversation as well. And they don't play Oregon. They don't play Penn State. They don't play Iowa, who are 3 of the 5 great defenses in the Big Ten. They're about to play Michigan, who is one of the great defenses in the Big Ten. And they will play Ohio State later. Point being, and yes, because I know that there are Ohio State fans watching. They don't like me saying that about Michigan, and they'll bring up that Michigan stats about Michigan's defense not being all that great. If they didn't have to be on the field for the entire game because they get no assistance from their offense, Michigan's defense would have incredible numbers. That's besides the point. To Kyle's point, Indiana's not played any of the good defenses in the Big Ten yet. Straight up. So this will be a very interesting game as an Ohio State fan to watch. If not only do your 2 big opponents left in the regular season are playing each other, but also like, what does Indiana really have? This is mandatory viewing for Ohio State fans.
Yep. I was just trying to quickly find some stats about the teams that Indiana has played. They played some decent defenses.
Right.
Washington surprisingly is a pretty good defensive team here, and they put up 31 points against Washington. Nebraska is a pretty decent defense as well too.
But
they put up 56. Yeah, I know a lot happened in that game. Yes.
That game was such an anomaly because of turnovers. So you can't
understand.
Yeah.
But Michigan here, we will find out. We'll find out. So you got Michigan to cover,
you have Michigan.
I'm sorry, Indiana to cover in that game.
Yeah, and by the way, I think at halftime it'll be real close, and then Indiana will take over in the second half.
Mm-hmm. All right, probably the game of the week here. I mean, you can argue that Georgia and Ole Miss is as well. They're both the same. They're both the same spread. Alabama and LSU at LSU. Alabama on the road, a 2.5 point favorite in this game here. I believe it is your pick this time, Jared. So who do you got in this matchup? Alabama 2.5 points.
Yeah. So these 2 teams' record against the spread are pretty similar. LSU was on a really good hot streak against the spread and just as a football team in general until last week. Not last week, but their last game, which I don't think was not last week, until their last game, not last week. That being said, we got a super narrow spread once again, like we had in the Georgia Ole Miss game, only 2.5. So to me, it makes sense to just go ahead and pick the winner. And if I lose on the 2.5 points, then I lose on the 2.5 points. And you just say, gosh darn it. So, yeah, give me Alabama because I think they're going to win the game straight up. And like I said, if the 2.5 points come back to bite me, then so be it.
Yeah, this game is always tough, especially at LSU here. Gosh, I really want to pick LSU to cover here, but I mean they laid a turd
Yeah.
against Texas A&M
And then Texas A&M laid a turd against South Carolina.
Ago. Yep, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So they've had a week.
But it was LSU's last game. They had a bye week last week. Both of these teams were on bye last week.
No, that's right. They did. They both had bye weeks to to figure stuff out here. Man, to me, I struggle with this game the most of who to pick. Doesn't mean I'm going to be right with the other ones. I've been wrong more often than right so far this year. But
don't make me pull up the scoreboard.
It's fine. I can't see it anymore right now.
Because Discord's broken.
Yeah, I'll pick Alabama. I'll pick Alabama here. Their last games
Not
here.
So fast.
Their last games here, other than their blowout win to Missouri, like it's been pretty good teams. I know they lost to Tennessee. They had a 2-point victory over South Carolina, which we're finding out South Carolina is actually a pretty good team that's just lost a lot of close ones. Lost to Vanderbilt and beat Georgia. Some pretty good opponents here from Alabama. So yeah, I'll just pick who I think is going to win as well, and I'll pick Alabama as well.
All right. Next game.
Yeah. Good luck watching this game. Washington and Penn State.
I have a Peacock subscription.
And at Happy Valley here on the Peacock app.
I'm just saying, and I'm not saying, but I am suggesting that maybe if you happen to be in the SlooPcast Discord server, that it might potentially in Minecraft be a little bit easier to watch this game. In Minecraft.
All right. In Minecraft?
Yeah, it's an internet joke. Would just
all right.
It's like internet for saying allegedly, where you're just trying to listen. I'm not going to give the game away.
Either way, Penn State is a 13.5 point victory. 13.5 point favorite in this game here. Penn State trying to lick their wounds from last weekend's loss to Ohio State. Is this?
Did they get a thorn in their paw?
Is this their whiteout? I don't know.
Every time I've watched a Penn State game this year, the entire crowd is wearing white. I feel like they've just made it their thing, like all the damn time. Ohio State game last week was
it is against Georgia. They said that their yearly whiteout is against Washington.
You said Georgia, and you really confused me for a second.
Wow. Their yearly whiteout is against Washington this year.
You couldn't geographically couldn't be further apart.
I know. I don't recall me saying that, but
it's recorded.
Yep. My pick here. Penn State.
If you ever want to just for the
deciding to do whiteouts, that's not Ohio State, that's not Michigan, and trying to up that record in their whiteout games here.
They just want to do it at night. There's no big conspiracy. They just want to do it at night. And Fox always puts Ohio State in the noon slot now. Blame Fox.
I'll pick Penn State to cover here. 2 touchdowns. They win by 2 touchdowns here. Definitely plausible here. Washington. Yeah. Anytime that you lose to Iowa and you let Iowa score 40 points, that doesn't bode well here. So I'll pick Penn State to cover.
So both of these teams about 500 against the spread this year. Both of these teams are sub 500. Neither of these teams are 500. They're sub 500 against the spread this year. Neither team performing well against the number. I went over this game a lot, back and forth, trying to figure out who I was going to pick here. And ultimately I'm going back to the And I don't even know if this is smart at this point because I'm sure Vegas is caught up with it. So it might be dumb to keep using this logic. But there is a trend that when one team in the Big Ten travels to the opposite coast, that they don't perform well against the spread. Time zones shouldn't be an issue here because it's 7:30. So from a body clock standpoint, it's just 3:30 for the Huskies. So it's not bad from that perspective at all. But the numbers are the numbers, and the numbers are suggesting that teams perform worse against the spread when traveling from one coast to the other coast. So based purely on that, I'm going Penn State to cover. I do think they win the game. I think that, in my opinion, goes without saying. It's not to say Washington has no chance, because, you know, you could easily play the game of like, I said earlier, or not earlier, but on our Thursday show, that I don't think Ohio State's going to cover against Purdue. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the Penn State game was so intense, and there's a bit of a letdown. Now, Ohio State might underperform the number against Purdue because it's Purdue, because the number's big. And that just means that you don't cover if you're Ohio State. For Penn State, if they come into this game too flat, they'll lose. The risk of loss is much higher here, obviously, for Penn State. And so that possibility exists, but it also decreases the possibility that they'll come into this game flat. Like if you're Ohio State, you can kind of not put your 100% into Purdue and still win, but Penn State knows that they can't do that against Washington, which reduces the likelihood of a letdown. So give me Penn State win and cover.
All right.
If you watched our Thursday show, then you already know, but I'll just remind you super quick. And if you want to hear our detailed thoughts on this, you're going to have to watch the Thursday show. But Kyle and I both picked Ohio State to lose, but not to cover. So 38, too many points, scared us off. We both picked Purdue to cover. All right, Kyle. Is it time to do Chaos Theory?
It is. Yeah. There's quite a few games in here. Some of them that we've talked about already: Penn State, Washington, Indiana, Michigan, Texas, Florida, are some of the ones that we just talked about in the SlooPicks here. But some other games before, just building this up before you decide your pick here. So some other games that we could choose in this game here.
Hey, Kyle. Mm-hmm. I was leading you into the ad break, which is happening now.
Take it away.
I feel like 11 weeks into the season, you would have picked up the rhythm by now.
Missed it. I missed it.
The SlooPcast.com is where you can go to find all of our other links. Kyle went through all the sites. We don't need to do a super long ad break the second time around. So just go to the SlooPcast.com. You can find it's just a landing page where you can find all the other links that Kyle already talked about at the beginning of the show. We're about to play some ads that show up automatically from our podcast hosting service. They pay us for some ads. We put some ads in there, yada, yada, yada. But you can avoid those ads by subscribing to our Patreon. You get your own RSS feed. You can also just listen to it straight through the Patreon app if you prefer. So those ad breaks are coming now. And like I said, patreon.thesloopcast.com if you would like to avoid these ads in the future. All right, Kyle. Chaos Theory. It's time for Chaos Theory. In case anyone's listening for the first time, this game works like this. You have to pick a team that is unranked. And now that the College Football Playoff Committee is out, We're now using their top 25 instead of the AP top 25, although I don't know if there was a difference, quite frankly. But we are picking a unranked team to beat a ranked team. The point system works like this. It is the ranked team's rank inverted. What does that mean? If you pick the 25th ranked team to lose, that is worth 1 point. If you pick the first ranked team to lose, the number one team to lose, you get 25 points. And then the whole spectrum in between. There's a little cheat sheet up in the top right-hand corner of the graphic that's on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. Kyle, do you have your chaos theory pick ready?
I do. Yes. You want to go first or do you want me to?
I don't give a shit.
All right, I'll take that as Kyle, you go first. So for mine, how many teams do we have left here? Including Army. We are now using the college football playoff rankings.
Yeah.
Versus the AP and coaches poll, which does not matter.
We had been using the AP up until this point.
Yep. Army, BYU, Indiana, Miami, and Oregon are the only undefeated teams in college football right now. In FBS. In FBS, yes. My projection is that one of those teams is going to lose this weekend. All right. For I don't know how many points it is because I can't look at Jared's cheat sheet here. I got the number 9 Cougars losing to the Utes this weekend.
Yeah, number 9 translates into 17 points. 17 points. All right.
I know. You look here. Utah's 4-4.
Yeah.
BYU's 8-0.
Or 8-0.
8-0. Heyo. It is being played in Utah here. It is the
Which one? They're both in Utah.
Yeah, you're right. In Salt Lake City.
There you go.
That's the place. It is the Holy War, so anything can go here. But I like
Fire,
I like my odds.
Brimstone, Armageddon.
Yep. I like
the end of times.
I like my odds in this one, so I'll pick the Utes to pull out the upset here. BYU is only a 3.5 point favorite in this game, Jared.
Interesting. It's a pretty good pick. I don't know if I gave that game as hard of a look as I should have. Hearing you describe it, I think that's actually a pretty good pick. I think I may have glossed over that one. My pick this week, I'm not really predicting it. I just like the value proposition, quite frankly. In fact, I already said earlier in the SlooPicks that I expect this team to win. But chaos theory is a different thing than the SlooPicks, isn't it? We're playing.
It is.
It's a value proposition, and I think Texas, sitting there ranked number 5, which is worth 21 points, is a pretty good value proposition. If I get 21 points out of this, I would take a pretty damn commanding lead. If I get 21 points out of this, that would put me at 53 points for the year, which wouldn't be as much if Kyle also hits this weekend. Kyle would still be winning. He's 6 points ahead of me. So that's 17 to 21. It's only 4. But listen, this is why you have to cheer for BYU if you're Team Jared.
So some other games here, and Jared and I just made our picks here, but some other games to kind of keep an eye out for here. Clemson on the road to Virginia Tech. Maybe. Clemson's only a 6.5 point favorite in that game. Iowa State on the road to Kansas. or Iowa State's only a 3-point favorite in that game. Those are some potential ones. I'm not even going to entertain the Terps on the road to Eugene. Same thing with Mississippi State on the road to Tennessee.
Mississippi State's awful.
You know who else is awful? Florida State on the road to Notre Dame.
I gave that I gave that game more thought than I should have.
26.5.
Yeah.
Is the Vegas line.
And when I say I gave that game more thought than I should have, I gave it 2 seconds and I should have given it 1. Because, there's just branding to it, right? You're like, ooh, Florida State. Oh, wait a minute. Florida State.
Holy crap.
What?
I'm looking at Florida State's schedule here. Yes, I know they've only won one game.
Uh-huh.
I know that they've only won a game.
So is Purdue. For
in
context.
The United States, in the country
of
the United States, the most points that they've ever scored is 16.
Yeah. That's a weird way to frame that.
They scored 21 points in week 0 when they were in Dublin. But in the United States, they've only scored 16 points twice.
Dublin sounds nice.
Wow.
Yeah. That's Florida. I listen. At some point,
They got the talent. Like, what the hell?
At some point, I'm going to, during the off season or maybe during December, during the time in between, but I want to watch like a 3-hour video essay on YouTube about exactly what went wrong in at Florida State this year. Like,
you're not the only person,
because you can only watch so many games on Saturday before your head explodes. So it's not like I've been watching Florida State, because why would I? Because I haven't watched them since like week 2. But what the hell? Like,
just bizarre.
I need an H-Bomber guy style 3-hour video essay on what went wrong in Tallahassee this year.
So bizarre.
So bizarre.
Those are the games, unless you want to maybe a safer one with Oklahoma and Missouri, which Missouri is 24th somehow. Virginia and Pittsburgh. And
I looked at Virginia and Pittsburgh.
And Washington State are the other games.
I gave Virginia Pittsburgh a good hard look. And, ultimately, Pittsburgh's not worth enough points, really. That was ultimately what I did. I have to say, Kyle, I'm a little bit jealous of your pick. I wish I had taken a harder look at BYU, Utah. I'm a little bit jealous of your pick. I'm kind of concerned.
All right, I think that's it. Anything else you want to add on before we wrap up this week 11 of our SlooPicks?
No, sir. I'm good. Do you have anything in Kyle's corner?
I have anything in Kyle's corner. Ryan Day did talk about hoping to see Tyleik Williams this week. He said that he's
let him rest.
Might leaning towards that he's available this Saturday.
Available. I like the phrasing available. I think that's what he always says. But like, there's a difference between available and will play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let him rest.
So speaking of, I missed this for last week's episode, Jared, but I think one of Austin's over-unders was non-starting tight ends making a catch here. I totally forgot that.
By last week, do you mean yesterday? And by yesterday, Do you mean in our time?
An
hour ago.
Yeah. Will Kamarick could potentially come back this week, but he says that he's ahead of schedule. I don't anticipate him playing this week, but maybe something to keep.
Let him rest. 38.5 point favorites.
I agree.
Let him rest.
Yeah. All right, that's it. That's all I got for this episode, Jared.
All right. Tonight's ending music, like it was yesterday, or in our time, 45 minutes ago, will be the new bomb Turks. So with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support your local podcasters. Once again, these are the new bomb Turks.